Rico Cavella. Welcome to this episode of Fearless Aging, where in every episode, my guest and I, we strive to offer you proven tips and strategies that you can implement immediately to greatly improve your overall health and well-being. So we're here to inspire you and empower you to become your best self so you can go out and make a bigger positive impact in the world. So the title of today's episode is, I got to scroll it back up here, is The Benefits of Live Oxygen to Reverse the Effects of Premature Aging and Poor Health. So this is going to be a really interesting show. This is something that we haven't covered before. And of course, Fearless Aging is all about reversing the effects of premature aging and poor health. So our expert guest today is Mark Squibb. He invented the first reservoir, EWOT, which stands for Exercise with Oxygen Training system, to help an autistic girl way back in 2006. So the super high oxygen levels in the brain and body from his invention enabled able-bodied users to increase their intelligence within a week and roll back their health issues by 15 to 25 years. So that's pretty impressive. So Mark Squibb, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, this is a great topic. So my first question for you is, just tell us a little briefly about your journey, how you came to develop this.
Well, there are two explanations. The first was that I spent about, 25 years of my formative life writing software. And in that, I did a lot of chair time. And, when I was back in my 40s, I ended up feeling like my forward-looking quality of life prognosis was pretty poor. And one time I was walking down the street in Montreal, which is where our development lab was, and I felt a tear running down my cheek. And I'm like, why am I crying? Because I had just left a chiropractor's office. Her name was Safi. And I was crying, or I saw the tear come down my cheek, because for the first time I realized, or I remembered, what it was like not to hurt. And, because she had a really good touch, and I just realized that, my life, or my forward-looking quality of life was going downhill. And then I needed to start, make some real changes if I was going to, be happy and healthy, as time moved forward. So that was one. And then the second issue was my mom got sick. She died effectively 2 years from my current age of cancer. And my dad has had, he died, I guess, a couple of years ago, but, he suffered with a whole bunch of health-related stuff for, 25 years. And I'm like, wow, sure, man, I really don't want to live their experience. Hell, I'm just getting started. And then, my wife and I started having kids at 40 again. And so somewhere along the way, one of my oldest was injured with some, I'll call it injected chemicals. And I'm like, wow, I have a problem here, because when somebody hurts one of your kids, you're, desperate to reverse that. So I ended up going down the oxygen path, trying to discover what was going on. And believe it or not, ended up with the solution to all of the aforementioned problems, realizing that it all mapped back to a process that's usually blamed on age when it isn't actually aging. And so what I was hoping to do was kind of introduce your audience to the actual biomechanics behind what I had always thought or been convinced was the consequence of getting older. And it wasn't. I was like, okay. And not only is it not a consequence of, quote unquote, the time on the wall, or the time in, quote unquote, since you were born, it's actually a consequence of your body losing the ability to make energy, thus losing the ability to heal, thus losing the ability to do lots of other things. And the great news for your audience is it's not complicated. It's plumbing. So anyway, that's where I go. So in terms of my history, how I got here, I was falling apart. My parents were falling apart. and I saw things happening to my kids, and I was unhappy. And I was like, okay, well, I just found my next career.
It's so good. Well, before we go on, I just want to let you know, be sure and stay till the end, because we're gonna give you how you can connect with Mark on his website. He's got. I'll let him tell you all what's on there and what you can learn and what you can experience there.
Right. Well, on the website, we have hundreds of case studies of people who have, restored cognitive function, a lot of military, et cetera. And so just as a case in point, we have people who have recovered from, I'll call it injuries, some very serious, and mostly just by putting their body in a position where it can heal from things like it did when you were really young, because the LIVO2 process reestablishes basically, I'll call it the dynamics of youth. And so anyway, that's all on our site. We've got a lot of content. One of the other features we have is we've got what we call a real human now interface. So my model in creating that was you go on the website and you actually get to talk to a human. If you press the button that says talk to a human now, we have, our site is staffed continuously, so you can always reach us. But we also have, I'll call it very trained staff to support and answer your questions.
Yeah, that's so good. I know. I hate those chat things. You go in there and chat and you got to wait, and they don't understand what you're saying. That's so good. That's really good, Mark.
Well, I don't mean to go down there, but that was why, we ended up creating that. It's like you go to a site, you call some company, and you just get the digital runaround. And I said, I don't like that. I do not want our customers to have that experience.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's get into it. Let's talk about how you discovered it and how you came up, what you invented to actually enable people to get more oxygen into the system so their body can function better and heal.
All right. Let me take it from the top. I'm going to talk about the physiology. All right. Then I'm going to move into the tool that addresses the physiology and the how and why it works.
Sounds good.
And then that'll let your people visualize, but I'm going to just give you a nutshell. Basically, LIVO2 is a turbocharger for your exercise. So if you've heard of a turbocharger for your car, that's what we do. The way it works is by tricking your heart and lungs, your pulmonary system and your respiratory system into reacting and responding like it did when you were a kid. Okay, and we can provoke the same physiology as like what you would get. And so, like, for example, our users are pretty much never sore. And quick elevator, if you measure their IQ, within about 2 weeks, their functional IQ will be between 5 and 15% measurably higher. And I've got some case studies that show that. Okay, and if they use the product, or after having used the product for a period of somewhere between 3 and 6 months, most of our users will report a functional age regression, meaning if they take their list of health problems and they compare it, or they go back in time to when their health problems were as they are, they will reverse those health problems somewhere between 15 and 25 years.
And this is just by getting more oxygen into your body, into your brain.
Well, into the body and the brain, but it's more about reversing the stress injury that happens. So, I mean, we all notice, and I was telling the story, it's like, so if you think about somebody that's been through a big stress event, like you had a divorce, or, some sort of personal catastrophe, or you had an illness, or somebody you care about, the body doesn't reacts to stress poorly. Okay, and so there's constructive stress, but there's destructive stress. And, like, for example, if you're in the woods and a bear comes up on you, what's the first thing you do?
You freeze, I guess.
Exactly.
Think, what should I do? Yeah.
Right. Well, and again, I'm just creating, a matrix. So the first thing you do when you hear something is you stop breathing. The reason you stop breathing is your reflex is to silence the airflow in your sinuses so you can hear. Okay, so it's a defensive. But when you sit at your desk or you have a stressful lifestyle, that stop breathing reflex kicks in, and the overall performance of your respiratory process degrades. And there's that, if it's degraded for long enough, there's actually a point where it transitions from being, I'll call it a reflex, to actually a process of accumulating injury, which is where you get into, the observation that people that have had big stress events, their health goes downhill. Like a lot of times, hey, a wife will die and the husband who's head over heels in love with her will pass in the next 8 months. And there's a, almost predictable time frame. Well, there's physiology and a mechanism of that, which results, which is a consequence of stress-related degradation. So I'm gonna share a little screen, and it's gonna come across in black and white, but it does tell a story. And let's see, you can see it. I'm hoping that can we see my mouse on here? All right, on my screen, it's got some red and black, but every time we have a stress event, and the tissue is deprived from oxygen for 90 minutes, then it triggers a durable, if not permanent, inflammation in the vascular system that causes the capillaries to go from their normal size to a smaller size. Okay, the same effect is associated with a lot of childhood shots, all right, or trauma, or head injury. And so when this inflammation occurs, it creates a durable choke or blockage to blood flow. Okay, so when this piles up through life, and I'm going to switch my screen share on you, if we ask, Google, it will tell you something to the tune that you can expect about 1%, 0.7 to 1% per year loss in your body's vascular performance or your VO2 max and blood. But it turns out that this loss of performance is a consequence of this progressive accumulation of inflammation in the vascular system. Okay, and so, you start out, after you hit about 20 or 30, things go downhill because, this stress or, this progressive vascular injury starts to pile up. The powerful thing about LiveO2 is that, believe it or not, that injury is reversible to the tune of 15 to 25 years. Okay, so that when you reverse this injury and you open the vascular system, you restore the body's ability to make energy and heal to a status or performance level that matched where you were at 15 to 25 years ago.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah.
So, it's very simple. It's not fancy, but it's about restoring the blood flow. And once you restore the blood flow, i.e. oxygen delivery, then the whole system works like it did many years ago.
Wow, that's so good, Mark. Mark, we have a short 60-second announcement for our audience. And when we come back, let's talk about the system that you developed and how it works and how people can utilize it.
Perfect.
All right. All right, here we go. Come on. Oh, shit. Why is it not coming on?
Do you wake up feeling exhausted, stiff, and sore? Do you feel like no matter how hard you try, those extra pounds won't budge, and the energy and vitality you once had are slipping further away? If this sounds like you, don't give up. Feeling tired and immobile isn't your destiny. It's not too late to take back your energy, your youthful shape, and feel great in your body again. Meet Rico Caveglia, America's healthy aging trainer, creator of the Aging Living Lifestyle and the Vitality for Life Wellness Program. At age 83, Rico has the moves and vitality of someone half his age and has a fitness age of just 35. For over 40 years, Rico has helped hundreds of people just like you regain their energy and vitality. That's agelesslivinglifestyle.com/coaching to learn more and book your free call with Rico to see if you or your parents are a good fit for this transformational program.
All right, we're back with Mark Squibb, the inventor of the Live O2 oxygen system. So, Mark, tell us about then what you came up with once you learned all this, how you developed your system and how it works and how people can utilize it.
Perfect. All right, let me pull up a share. I'm going to show what the actual product looks like. The product ends up being used in conjunction with I guess I'll just share that. I don't know if this is going to be really clear on this. It's basically a mass-based system, and what we do is we control what you breathe while you work out. So give me just a second. I've got a better screen share than I'm going to bring up. So I apologize for the glitch here. I meant to load this. Here we go.
Okay. Is using a stationary bike or like a treadmill, is that the only way that you can use your product?
You can use any piece of stationary exercise equipment that works. So here's a better picture of the actual product. Okay, so there's three different versions. We've got, we invented the technique called adaptive contrast. It's a patented platform. And basically the adaptive contrast enables a user to switch from, believe it or not, oxygen-reduced air to oxygen-rich air. And you wear a mask, you train on a stationary bike or a treadmill or recumbent, whatever piece of exercise equipment, matches your taste. Okay, but as you exercise, the system will feed you first oxygen-rich air. Okay, and what that does is it brings your body into a well-oxygenated state. And I'm going to go to a Brain O2 protocol and sort of explain that. So basically you exercise on a piece of equipment and then you breathe and then you'll switch back and forth between oxygen-rich and oxygen-reduced air mixtures. And what that does is it opens up the vascular system and it blasts it with oxygen. So it's open the pipe and blast. And, our beginners are like, okay, it takes them a little while to get the hang of it and open things up slowly. But after you're an experienced user, I'm going to change my screen share and actually show you an interesting phenomenon. Okay, so here is a picture of an activity or a process in my brain, and I'll try to scale this so it works good. Okay, can you see the graph okay?
I hope they can see that. I'm not sure.
Okay, well, I'll talk through it.
Yeah,
so this is on my brain. We're shining a laser into the surface of the brain, which is simultaneously measuring the oxygen coming in and oxygen going out. Actually, it's measuring the difference, which is the amount of oxygen being used in my brain during the Live O2 session. Okay, which is a real-time live measurement of the amount of energy being produced in the brain. Okay, so if you can see, the graph is keyed to 0, which is a baseline. Okay, and then during the cycle of oxygen-rich to oxygen-poor, coordinated with sprints, the first thing is you kind of stabilize on oxygen. But as I go through the first challenge event, which is to exert hard on a low oxygen mixture, my body adapts and says, oh my goodness, there's not much oxygen there. Okay, so the body says, or adapts to the low oxygen mixture to make itself as efficient as possible using the oxygen that's there. Then I throw the switch, and then next I get a super concentrated between 3 and 4 atmospheres worth of oxygen. And so the body responds with what we call magic moment oxygenation, where we got maximum blood flow and maximum oxygen, causing a punch through. So you remember I talked about the body being, having suffered progressive injury and occlusion to the vascular system. This effect of switching from oxygen or to an oxygen mixture where you got maximum flow, basically it uses the heart like a ram pump and the vascular system like a pipe, but the low oxygen mixture dilates the pipe, opens the pipe, and then the heart rams super oxygenated blood through the vascular system to and through the capillaries. Okay, so when I said plumbing, this is the body's version of Drano. This is how the body restores circulation. So as I go through this, you'll notice, and this is it's an exercise in increasing functional intelligence. So I went through the same cycle about 12 times, okay, such that by the time I finished the 20-minute workout, I think it was 18 minutes, my brain was producing 29% more energy than it was when I began.
Wow.
Okay, and we correlated this with touch pads and various other technology. But, if you measure performance, okay, having the brain able to make more energy changes the way you perceive the world. Things that were stressful before, your brain understands that, well, okay, maybe I shouldn't react like that. So you just, you're calmer. Okay, so it's a totally different way, and it changes the way you perceive the world, in terms of the brain. But the brain is not the only. It just happens to be easy to measure by using neurocognitive tools. The same effect happens in your heart, your lungs, your liver, your kidneys, and throughout the body. Okay, so this workout model basically is extreme Drano for the vascular system. And once you use this technique for a while, what you discover is that your whole body ends up breaking through, and you effectively restore circulation throughout the whole body. So it's like once you get the blood flowing and oxygen and nutrients delivered to every tissue, as a rule, body will end up working like it did 15 to 25 years ago.
Wow, that's so good. That's amazing. Let me ask you: does your machine, the oxygen producing machine, is it? Do you have to regulate it manually, or is it automated? Can you set up a manual program? It'll change. It'll change automatically, or do you have to do it manually?
Well, what we found is that doing it manually is highly preferred, and that's because people are very different, and like even myself, um, you kind of want to feel it and change it yourself. So the challenge is we've never been able to come up with a way to quote unquote automate it, because the signals that happen change very much. Like, so for example, I ended up with a bit of a cold last week, and my ability ended up throttled. So like, for example, my output was running about half, at what it normally does. And so the point is, I would have liked to say, oh goodness, I could turn this into a computer program. But the thing is that it's always keyed to the way you feel. And that's why we've ended up keeping the mechanism manual and simple, so that, when you feel like you need to switch, you don't want to depend on a piece of electronic circuitry to enable you to switch. That's why it's been manual, as well as, and kind of keeping the user coupled with the device. I hope that made sense.
No, that's so good. I totally agree with that, because, we know from exercise physiology now, like when we're training a client and they're doing interval training, if you just try and say, okay, you're going to work real hard for 30 seconds and you're going to rest for 30 seconds, you're going to go again. No, you let the client determine how much time they need to recover, and you get much better results. So that's perfect. That's the way it should be.
Right. Well, and it's always them and their body. And, you know,
Yeah.
from an outside observer or from a computer point of view, you
Mark,
can never know what they're feeling.
yeah, Mark, we're almost out of time. It goes by so fast. So, first of all, we'll put your website address in the show notes, but it's live, LIVEO, the number 2.com. And so we highly recommend you go to live02.com and learn all about this system that can really restore your premature aging and overcome your poor health. Mark, that's so good. I really appreciate what you're doing, and that was a great interview. Thank you so much for being here. And I like to always end all of my shows with Einstein saying, knowledge without action is useless. So we always give you a lot of great knowledge and wisdom, but you got to take action on it. So I highly recommend you check out Mark's website, live02.com. And that's it. We're already out of time. Okay.